The Trials of the Sword are a gauntlet consisting of 3 trials with multiple floors. 12 floors in the beginning trials, 16 in the middle, 23 in the final. This DLC edition will test you much like Eventide Island's Shrine by stripping you of all your equipment and forcing you to start anew, feeding and fighting off the land as you can. This gameplay mirrors that of the Cave of Ordeals from Twilight Princess, but for someone who has frequented Hyrule, these trials should remind you of something much more familiar. The Zelda franchise has long been about cycles and history repeating, and while previously that reflected too often in gameplay mechanics, Breath of the Wild has found a way to retain this narrative element while somewhat hidden within the Trials of the Sword. I want to draw your attention to the naming of these trials. They are named Beginning, Middle, and Final. More specifically, I want you to note that they are not named Easy, Normal, and Hard, or something similar, as I believe these identifiers do not indicate their difficulty, but rather the order in which you will experience them, and that is very important for more than one reason. These trials are not meant to be tests of your skill alone, and therefore cannot be quantified by a difficulty ranking. These trials are tests brought upon you by the sword itself, a sword waiting to awaken its full potential for a worthy master, a sword once purified by the flames of the golden goddesses Din, Furora, and Nehru, a sword that through 3 sets of trials, a beginning, a middle, and a final, will test a new hero's power, courage, and wisdom. I believe the beginning trials to be a test of Link's power by the goddess of it, Din. This trial begins and ends with a single purpose, and that is to test your ability to overcome your enemy through sheer force and combat. The enemies within this trial are those designed with no defensive weaknesses, so sneaking around and attempting clever tricks yields little to no advantage. You will be tested in your ability to march into an enemy encampment and single-handedly take out an entire battalion. At the climax of this trial, you will find a Hinox, the greatest in size and health of the Oblin genus, or whatever taxonomy these guys would belong to if we scientifically categorize them as more than just monsters. To defeat this boss, you will find it comes to a test of force. Can you defeat this being of massive stature and health before he overpowers you? Complete this boss and you will transport yourself to one of my favorite rooms in the game. A nameless one, but one I'll refer to as the Shrine of the Sword. Make your way up to the pedestal holding the Master Sword, and you can return to the forest. But before you go, make sure you take note of the other platforms you can't reach yet, as you've only proven your power to the sword, and the Golden Goddesses await more. After completing this first trial, the Master Sword awakens a fraction of its full power, allowing the sword to have a base attack of 40, up from its initial 30, which beckons back to the Master Sword's origins. In Skyward Sword, the first known Link is chosen by a Goddess Sword, a creation of the goddess left to protect Hyrule, Hylia. Through 3 trials, Link earns the right to purify the blade with the sacred flames of Din, Furora, and Nehru. With each trial accomplished, and each flame awakened, so too is its new power within the sword, lengthening its blade, enhancing its seeking ability, and finally transforming into the Master Sword itself. Notice a trend? Nelson Mandela once said, "The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." These middle trials are set forth by the goddess Furora, who will seek out your courage by throwing you into the heart of fear itself and asking you to overcome it. Many common fears are represented in this trial, like heights, darkness, hostile aliens. Maybe not as clear as some horror genres make it, but keep in mind that Zelda has a wide audience base, many very young, so you can't expect the same levels of crazy that, say, Outlast will bring. Regardless, the most interesting part of this trial is really the strategy you must take to conquer it. While most horror video games these days will have you attempting to escape the evil by running away, these middle trials force you to go in head first to confront that fear and defeat it. When the world below you is nothing but emptiness, and you could very well fall to your death, you must hover over that chasm to defeat your enemies. When darkness is all that consumes your world, you must leave the only lights afforded to you and thrive within the blackness. trusting only your gut to eliminate your foes. When the technology, just like the one at your side, awakens a monster who can kill anything in its path, you must find a way to use that same technology against it. I find the ending area of these middle trials to be the most telling of the goddess Ferrara. It is the same design as the shrine sprinkled throughout Hyrule. The shrine's designed to test and train the hero worthy of the sword, Link, the incarnation of the same hero we've known from previous eras to possess the Triforce of Courage. Conquer the fear inside this trial, and Ferrara will further awaken your Master Sword, giving it a base attack of 50. One trial remains. This is potentially my favorite of the trials, and the one that really made me realize the meaning behind them, because there's an extreme difficulty you can face if you don't understand that this trial was set up to test your wisdom by the goddess Nehru. Immediately in this trial, you are placed into an area of rain, lightning, and skeletons. This trial will tempt you with rusted metal weapons sticking out of the ground everywhere because you really have no other options. Yet, if you try using them for long or are just standing near them, you'll be punished with giant bolts of lightning that will hit you very hard in a level that starts you out with very little food to begin with until you reach the first preparation floor. But one important thing to realize in this first area is that nearly every enemy can be killed in one hit. That's something we saw none of in the previous trials, and that's because this trial isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about knowing where and how to hit that matters. The preparation floors in this trial offer a different approach than the other trials as well. There are still the same chests to get, food to cook, and fairies to promptly scare off when you forget they're there and don't sneak up on them.
She's gone, I better learn how to face it. She's gone, what went wrong?
Wait, is that another one? Oh, we're good. But there is also a game design element here meant to foreshadow the upcoming areas and make you think so you can prepare. Small things like knowing a hearty radish cooked alone will result in a full heal plus a few temporary hearts if you can use them, will go a long way. But even more important, flame breaker boots tell us you're likely going to a lava area. Think about your time spent in Death Mountain and you may realize that there could be Octocrocs there that'll take your rusty weapons and turn them into clean, shiny new ones. Sizzlefin trout and spicy peppers may suggest you're going somewhere cold. Think harder still and realize that firewood and fire starters can help for secrets ahead. Ancient arrows may suggest guardians and other strong beasts, so first off, don't waste them, and second, maybe prepare some defensive or attack meals to help you along the way. In the three areas that follow the skeleton and the lightning, you will find more and more true how this trial can be hell if you're not going to use your head. Lizalfos are one of the most annoying and hard-hitting enemies you will encounter. With your weak weapons, they could take dozens of hits to kill, breaking your equipment in the process. But if you think about the elements and the tools that this trial is giving you, those elemental Lizalfos can die in a single hit, as can the Wizrobes. Even the elemental Talus bosses go down without a fight when using the weapons designed to bring them to their knees. Even the tougher enemies without an elemental design flaw can be wiped clean with a little thought. Up to this point, when you first encounter a Lynel, you could have collected up to 9 ancient arrows. These can turn even the toughest enemies into a one-shot kill, turning this gauntlet of some of the hardest enemies in the game into a universe-destroying wormhole target practice for this guy, this guy, this guy. Oh, no, missed that guy. This guy, this other dude, Wingardium Leviosa. More like Guardians of the Galaxia. I'm sorry. Leaving you to slightly pick up the pieces and head back to the Shrine of the Sword. Now at this point you have received the blessing and achieved these trials set forth by the Golden Goddesses, and so the Master Sword's full power is yours. Does this sound familiar? It should, because this is basically the setup of every Zelda game since A Link to the Past. Complete the 3 trials, obtain the 3 tokens, usually 1 green, 1 blue, 1 red, like the goddesses themselves, and unlock the force guarding the Master Sword. But these tokens, they aren't some old locksmith's key to open a sealed door. They don't grant you the strength to pull the sword from its pedestal. The trials you went through proved you are worthy to go through that gate. They gave you the strength to pull that sword. The tokens are merely a physical representation of the goddesses themselves that prove you are the one worthy master of this sword. The master's sword. And you are now the one hero who can vanquish evil. Before I end this video, I want to leave you with one more thing to think about. In a memory, Zelda talks to Link about a legend that states that an ancient voice resonates within the sword. She asks if he can hear it yet, but the memory cuts before the silent Link can deliver some form of non-verbal reply. But by the way Zelda asks, and the look on Link's face, we could easily assume the answer is probably no. When Zelda finally awakens the power within her and the sword glows, we hear this sound. For anyone who's played Skyward Sword, you may quickly notice this sound effect is one belonging to Fi, the spirit within the sword. So if it is at this moment that Fi can be heard by Zelda, immediately after awakening her power, it can easily be surmised that the ancient voice within the sword can only be heard by one with the power of the goddesses within them, or at least a piece of it. So why then, if chosen by the sword and supposedly having awoken his power, could Link not hear Fi? And it's not just mere speculation to his answer in this memory. All of these memories belong to Link, and this is the first time we see the sword communicate, and it's while Link's unconscious. Not just that, but think through your entire playthrough after you get the Master Sword. Do you hear a single thing from Fi? Lord knows in Skyward Sword she wouldn't shut up, so you'd assume she'd at least have something to say, like, Link, you've been asleep for 100 years, is it really wise to be snowballing for 3 months while the princess is in the castle fending off Ganon? But no, we hear nothing. Could this mean Link's power hadn't awakened yet? Could it be that all of Zelda's jealousy and disdain was misplaced for somebody who was in the same situation as she was? That although a talented warrior, Link was no more special than the other champions. I personally think this answer lies in the moments after you complete the final trials, having finally proved yourself to the three goddesses like Zelda did. Because it is here for the first time that Link actually hears this. And is reunited with a very old friend.